Glad you're joining us today. It's Thursday, April 2nd. It is day 10 of Stay Home, Stay Safe, and the 17th daily briefing from SBAM and our members. Just our continuing effort to make sure that small businesses in Michigan are up to date on what's going on, really out of the state, out of the federal government, just what's happening in the whole arena of small business trying to navigate this, and we're here to help. We've kind of gotten into a pattern or a rhythm as an organization. As I've said all along, our entire staff are continuing to work. We're working remotely, but we're all at work for small business in Michigan every single day. And our rhythm has kind of gotten to be morning meetings. We spend time most of the day with questions from our members, and we're fielding those questions. We gather information and sort of run the traps of what's happening in all the different government agencies that affects us. And we update our website on a continual basis, and then we prepare for this daily briefing with questions and answers and the latest from all corners. So that's become the pattern, and we're continuing to do that. Brian is once again live from his home office, his mobile office, I should say. Brian?
Yeah, I've got, my office is on wheels, and so back in the Ford Fusion. I want to, we've got a very special guest today, so I want to get straight to him. Senator Gary Peters has been extraordinarily accessible to small businesses and to the Small Business Association of Michigan. And a lot of you know his background, very experienced, a lot of very important and relevant experience. But I want to get right to him so that we've got just a little bit of time here to get some insight. We've asked him to address specifically the paycheck protection loans, and then also just some of the pinch points in there, and a little bit on what to expect in the future as well. So with that, Senator Gary Peters, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Brian. And Rob, thank you. Thank you for having me on this webcast with your folks, or the Zoom call with folks. Appreciate the opportunity. And I think we're going to take some questions as well. I'll try to be brief because I know we have a pretty narrow time frame here. But I just thought I'd start with a couple things that we're really focused on, which is important for us to get through this crisis. As you know, this is a public health crisis. First and foremost, that we've got to get our arms around this virus spread and try to control that. But the thing that's so challenging is the way that we actually get around it is we have to do things that are absolutely detrimental to the economy and keeping us separated, shutting things down. So we've got to get that the virus dealing with. And right now I've been really focused on making sure we have personal protection equipment, the kind of equipment coming into our healthcare system. I'm ranking, and among my assignments, I'm ranking member on Homeland Security and Government Affairs, which means I oversee FEMA. So FEMA is obviously the federal agency that's tasked with dealing with this. So I've been on the phone every day with FEMA, the administrator, working right now to bring supplies into Michigan, because we are now, unfortunately, one of the hot spots, the city of Detroit in particular. But as we know from this disease, it'll spread fairly rapidly if we're not really getting our arms around it. And so part of the bill that we passed, and I know you've had a deep kind of discussion in this last week. I mean, we had to deal with the public health aspect of it and the business aspect. And I just want to say, if we're looking at the next version, and we were talking about this before we went on the air here, is that there will be another version, which is really the fourth bill that we'll deal with. And we're going to have to look at where are some of the shortfalls, what are the gaps, and that will be some time. I don't think we should rush into that fourth one. We just passed over a $2 trillion bill, unprecedented in terms of the amount of revenue coming, or the funds, resources coming in the economy. So we need to step back and see what happens and where we're going to need additional help. Although I think one area for sure we're going to need help in is in the healthcare sector and our hospitals and healthcare providers, but especially hospitals. I've been on calls over these last weeks and days with CEOs and other administrators with our hospitals. They expect to be in really severe financial trouble without help. As you know, they've been backing off of the normal kind of procedures they do, which are not essential, but still important. And yet that's where they make most of their revenue. Things like hip replacements, things like that are really critical. And when you start moving back from that and then doing COVID-19 treatment, which is essential, that puts them in a really tough financial position. And quite frankly, even even hospital systems like the University of Michigan, which is by far the strongest one that we have financially in the state, thinks they're going to be in severe trouble. And I'm particularly worried about our rural hospitals. Our rural hospitals are going to be in a situation. So the legislation, in addition to the work we did with small business and unemployment, the substantial infusion of money into our hospitals, $150 billion. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I think that's going to be part of another bill. We're going to have to do more. We'll see how this continues to develop. But I bring that up because we all know the healthcare facilities we have in our communities, not only are they important for the healthcare of our residents, but they're a major driver for the economy in those areas too. And if they're in big trouble, that's going to spill over into the small business sector, and all of us will be impacted. So that's got to be a big focus. The other area that I worked on a lot, and I know you talked about this, was the unemployment comp. I think we were all expected it, but to see the 6 million people applying for unemployment here this week, and on the top of the 3 million last week, this is just unbelievable. And many of the folks who are applying, as you know, are literally a paycheck away from financial disaster for their family that's been pulled. And so this unemployment bill was extremely important to do, and do it quickly. Actually, the expansion of unemployment to the people who aren't traditionally can qualify for it was part of this legislation. It's actually a bill it's my bill, the Pandemic Assistance Act, that broadened the eligibility beyond folks who would normally get unemployment. And it was patterned after what we do with a natural emergency or a natural disaster, which FEMA is involved in. You know, when a hurricane comes in, people are displaced, jobs are lost, you've got to help people get back on their feet. We're basically using that model with the understanding that we don't have a hurricane in a region. Now we have a hurricane that's going across the entire country. So that's what this is patterned on, to make sure folks, even like small business owners, can qualify for unemployment insurance under this system. Independent contractors, the gig economy, all those people who are self-employed who find themselves, without income. Example of a business owner I talked to recently who had a cleaning business. All of a sudden, all of those clients went away, and her people didn't want to go into houses, and she was left without any kind of income. She'll need unemployment to get her through this tough time. So this is also for small businesses and individual employees. And as you're aware, it has a $600 per week plus up on top of what the state provides. That's going to be for 4 months through July. And I've had a lot of questions from the small business community in particular, and employers saying, where did the $600 come from? Why was it done that way? And I'll say it actually was more practical than anything else. And it was the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary Mnuchin, and the administration, as we look through this, is that I think the ideal situation would have been to have whatever the state provides, and that's anywhere from $150 to $360 a week, and then have an add-on so that people would be able to maintain their salary, at least for the 4-month period. But what became apparent to the Department of Treasury was that most state unemployment systems are antiquated and are simply, it would be really difficult to figure that out for every individual and change the amount that the federal government was going to pay. It was something that the belief was from the Treasury Department that it wasn't workable fast. And the whole idea is to get money to people as quickly as possible. So that's the $600 came out as to what's the median wage around the country. And so that's where we are. Now, I have folks that are concerned about when they try to rehire folks. So what does that mean for that? And we're working through, and I understand that, and we're working through kind of the issues related to that. I will say that the one thing that folks may not be aware of is that we are helping work share programs. And I'm sure, Brian, you're well aware of work share programs that the state has. So if you're an employer and you have an employee who works 40 hours a week, but you only need their services for 20 hours a week, you can pay them for the 20 hours a week, and then they can be on unemployment for the remaining 20 hours to get that time. So you can keep them on the payroll, you can keep them working, you can use the 7A loans for that, but you also have the help of unemployment to help leverage that. And I think we're going to have to we're trying to figure out the rules and federally, but if you start rehiring people, hopefully we're going to be through this thing before 4 months, and we're going to be able to start getting things started up. If you're bringing people back on, is there a way to do that so they are incentivized to work? They may still get benefits, but we have to make sure folks are incentivized to come back in the job. We've got to keep small businesses working. We got to get people back on the job as quickly as possible. And I don't want this to be a disincentive. And I think we can work it away. And I'd love to hear from your members in the weeks ahead, because I think if there needs some changes or tweaks to this, we can do that in that fourth package that comes forth. And that's the same with the 7A plan and the forgiveness. I think you have somebody from is it the Bankers Association going to be on after me, and they're doing great work. It's going to happen Friday, as you know, and I know the question came forward: is there going to be any kind of preference for larger businesses or smaller, and how it works? Basically, it's first come, first served. So this is like the early bird gets the worm. You know, get in quick. I know that's what you're planning to do with all your members. That's the strategy to do. Thank you for doing that, because I'm with you 100%. We want to get as much money in Michigan as possible. I know there are some senators that think the other 49 states are important. I only think this one's important. So we're going to get as much money as we possibly can. So I would encourage everybody, definitely get in quick. It is $350 billion. That's a lot of money. But then it is also not a lot of money given what we're dealing with in terms of the situation now. And so we think that may be another thing we're going to have to re-examine, particularly the 8-week time frame. 8 weeks, I hope we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we need to be prepared if that doesn't happen. And I know there's a discussions going on in Washington, which I'm a part of too, is that when it comes to small businesses, we may have to be doing more in that fourth package. If our small businesses go under, if all the people on this call, if we lose our small businesses, getting the economy back up and running again is going to take a whole lot longer. And I've been out there talking to folks who may not be as familiar with the business world, that they have to understand there's no such thing as a pause button that you push and the economy just pauses, and then you push it a second time and it starts up and we're right back to where we were. That isn't the way it works. We've got to do everything we can to keep our small businesses vibrant and keep their employees on the payroll for as much as we can, so that we can hopefully push a button to get it up quickly. But it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of resources. And I look forward to continuing to work closely with all of you. But I need to hear from you. So as businesses are experiencing challenges, issues, let me know, because we can incorporate that. Certainly your association. Let me know how we can get that incorporated into what I think will be an eventual fourth package. So that wasn't such a brief overview, but hopefully I covered a lot of the areas I think people are concerned about.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Senator. And you actually, I was glad to hear you explain kind of the purpose behind keeping employees connected to their employers. We had talked about it like that when it's okay to go out there and start operating again, that things do snap back into place faster, because employers don't have to go out and find a new workforce and go through will go fast. When that number was set, the world looked a lot different. I thought right. $350 billion sounded like a lot of money when it was first put out there. And then now, as we kind of see the overall fallout being more than what it looked like it would be just 2 or 3 weeks ago, all of a sudden we think maybe this money won't last much more. I've been telling people, get in right now, like day one if you can. There's going to be a log jam in the banks, but still get in as quick as you can, because it might only be available for a week or 10 days. Any sense for what to expect in terms of how much activity is going to run through this, and how many days are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think you raise a great point. I can't tell you that because I don't know, but I think you're right. It's going to be massive. And you just see that just on the unemployment rolls. When you have over a 2-week period, nearly 10 million people filing for unemployment. And you think about what we've seen in past, I think the last record before the record was set last week was in the early 1980s. And I think the biggest one was 600,000 in a period. So we went from 600,000 being the record in 1983 during a really tough economic time to in 2 weeks going to 10 million. I mean, this is just unprecedented. It's a hard stop. And we can't let this hard stop translate into an unstoppable downward spiral. But I'm sure it's going to go quickly. And I concur with you, Brian. Get folks there. I know our Michigan bankers are geared up, but it's not going to be easy for them too. But get in early, and hopefully there'll be more if necessary. But it's better to have it in your pocket now and not wait for something later to come down the pike.
Senator, let me give you a little ammunition for that discussion in Washington. $350 billion set aside. There are 22 million small businesses in the United States, and that's about $17,000 each. clearly, every company won't apply. But I talked to a bank president earlier today who said they're seeing requests for between 50,000 and 1.5 million. So that 17,000 average number tells us all, I think, that there simply won't be enough money. And I think your early bird catches the worm advice is really good.
Yeah, good.
Hey,
So I thought
go ahead.
maybe if one question that came in, and this is not going to apply to most of our members right now, but depending on how long it goes, I just want to kind of put a bug in your ear about there might be some companies that have to file for bankruptcy protection throughout this process. And if that were to happen, does any sense for the impact on their eligibility for some of this support if they still meet the terms of the Paycheck Protection Program?
I don't know that answer offhand. We'll get back to you on that from what do we do. I mean, that's an important question because obviously some people knew immediately the dire situation they were in. So I don't know. We'll get back and you can get that out to your members.
That's excellent. Hey, let me ask you a different question. It's been interesting. A forgivable loan is the vehicle we're talking about here. And I think what I'm hearing from a number of small business owners is, how do I know that it will be forgiven? And I think there's some pretty decent clarity in the law that if you spend it on payroll and utilities and lease payments, there was a specific list. I guess maybe just, people are trying to figure out what is the business risk I'm taking by taking out this loan. Mm-hmm. What can you tell us that may give people some assurance maybe that it will in fact be forgiven? There's just skepticism, I think, that it will be forgiven.
Sure, I can understand that. I just that's completely the intent of Congress. There's just no question about the fact that that it will be forgiven as long as you fit those criteria. And it's really about protecting people on the job and for their benefit, but also the reason that Brian mentioned too, to be able to start up right away. So that's going to be forgiven. And I realize that, at first when you talk about having loans to help a business, and say, as a business person, a guy myself who's been in the business world for a lot of my career, the last thing you want is more debt when you don't know what the future holds and what you're working on. I mean, so I can understand everybody like, wait a minute, this goes against all of my intuition that I shouldn't be going into debt when I don't know the future. So I get that. I understand that. That's why it has to be forgiven. It will be for that 8-week period. And the additional expenses. So, part of it, making sure the risk isn't there for the banks too. I mean, the loans are 100% guaranteed by the federal government. That doesn't normally happen. Usually everybody has some skin in the game. That's not happening now. The Fed is saying, we want to get this out the door. Because if we were requiring to have not 100% risk, then you'd have to go through all of the other procedures and collateral and everything else, but to try to minimize that. Right now we're saying 100% guaranteed, get the money out, get it out quickly. Try to get it out that day or the day after to do it, and it'll be forgiven. So I can assure you that is the complete understanding of folks in Congress. I haven't seen any pushback from the SBA on that or the administration. We understand the urgency of this. We understand that time is not on our side, and we understand that if you just saddle more businesses with debt, we're going to have more failures. We're not going to accomplish our end of getting the economy back started up again if all of a sudden small businesses are saddled with more debt that will just crush them. We can't let that happen, and we won't.
Yeah. Hey, Senator, thank you for time goes so fast. I know we'd love to spend more time with you. We've been trying to do these to 30 minutes, and we got a couple other issues to talk about. We really appreciate you spending this time with us, and we really appreciate your accessibility to us and your efforts to always understand what the needs of small business in Michigan are. So thank you. Thanks for your support.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all you do for small businesses. And my last word to everybody, just please stay safe. Take care.
Thank you, Senator.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hey, Brian, let's talk about, in fact, the Senator alluded to it a little bit, an effort that we have going to try to really promote this PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, to small businesses all across the state.
Yeah, we have been, what happens is calls come in the middle of these things, and then all of a sudden we lose the video feed. because I use my phone for this. That's the other thing. Anyway, yeah, we have been involved, really leading. SBAM has been leading and constructing a lot of important partners to launch a major communications effort to make sure that businesses know about this option. Now, everybody watching this show, you know all about it. This Facebook Live briefing. I kind of feel like it's a television show now. But everybody that has been a part of this, you know all about it. But please believe me when I say that most small businesses do not yet know about this. And what we're concerned is that the larger small businesses, they have major banking relationships that are looking out for them. They have accounting firms that are putting their plans together for them. All this stuff come together for them. But what about the truly, like the smallest of the small businesses? Do they know about this? So we're working with, well, I can't give you the partners quite yet. We're going to introduce that tomorrow when we launch. But we're working with so many. It's going to be over 100 coalition members, and including the state. I can say that. But it's going to provide a great toolkit, not just to say what it is, but also some great CPA guidance on making sure that you spend the money in a way that maximizes the loan forgiveness. So what we're trying to do is bring high-powered, high-cost advice to everybody, to the masses. And it'll come through a site that we will unveil tomorrow morning, and just equip everybody. So we just want to make sure that nobody hears about this 10 days from now and it's too late because the money's already gone. Just want to make sure everybody has a shot at it.
And Brian, let me just say on behalf of SBAM and our members, thank you, because you have been put in sleepless nights over this thing and working at all hours of the day. It's just been incredible what you've been able to pull together. We started with just kind of an idea. How could we inform every small business in our state? And you took it and ran with it and brought some great partners to the table. So congratulations to you and thank you. So tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow's the day that Treasury says that we'll be open for business for PPP loans. We have actually invited Michael Tierney from the Community Bankers Association of Michigan to come on and talk a little bit about what we might be expecting. And Michael, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Rob. And thank you, Brian.
Yeah, so the question really is, are we ready?
Well, this is such a big thing and it's hitting everybody in a very short period of time. So, the SBA is overwhelmed. I think it would be safe to say that the banks are drinking water from a fire hose. And I know all of your small business members are trying to be up to this as quickly as they can. All the guidance is not out from the SBA. We were supposed to get more guidance last night. That has not come out. We have some initial guidance. So what I'd like all your members to know is the banks are going to do the best they can for you, but they don't have all the tools they need yet for the payment protection program. We banded together with the Michigan Bankers Association, so the banks in the state are represented by both of us, and in our state it's kind of unique. Just about every bank's a member of both. And this is such a big thing that we felt like we had to work together and try to make things available for all the businesses. So we have an awful lot of information. I told Brian that we would share our information with you, and you can go ahead and share it with your members. We have to clean it up a bit because there's a fair amount in there that is just for the bank side, but I think there's a lot of good information, and you guys, I've been looking at your site and you guys have done a great job putting information out to your members.
Well, thanks, Michael. And I maybe just a couple questions too, because we've been trying to provide as good advice as we can, but of course everybody is trying to get more details or trying to get more information, including banks. And so what we have been recommending to our people is that you need to find out, first of all, is the bank that you normally work with, are they a certified SBA lender? And most are certified SBA lenders. Most banks are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they do many SBA loans. So there's a difference between certified, like they're allowed to do them, but and allowed to fast track them and use the express process. But are they? But is it really something that they normally do? Can you provide us any kind of advice or tips as a small business owner is trying to decide where and how to seek a paycheck protection loan, understanding that that the money's probably not going to last that long, so they're going to have to do it quickly. But what would you suggest in terms of how they check with their bank, and then how they decide if they should wait and stick with that bank or if they need to look at other options?
Well, your advice to your banks is great. I mean, to your small business members is great, that they should get on this right away. First, they should go to the bank that they bank with, because of the unprecedented demand that there will be. And remember, banks have to do the same thing you have to do. We have to follow all the guidelines. The banks have stayed open, serve their communities, but their lobbies are usually by appointment only. They have drive-ups, and they're all going to be on their phones tomorrow, doing their best job, try to take all of your calls. But so my advice would be, go to your bank. There's 3 tiers for the SBA here in Michigan. There are SBA preferred lenders, and then most of the banks in the state are approved SBA lenders. If they've done an SBA loan in the last 15 years, they're approved, and they can submit in this program. They just might not have submitted one recently. And then there were a handful of banks that we in the MBA have worked with to get approved this week, and they are either approved or they're soon to be approved. So they could take an application. So the number one, if you don't have any kind of banking relationship at all, it's going to be harder for you. If you have an existing banking relationship, your bank is going to want to try to work with you. If the bank's been prospecting you, talk to them about moving your business over there if they'll do it. But they'll do everything they can to accommodate as many businesses as they can, but you're going to have to be patient.
So, Michael, I talked to one of our members earlier today, and I that this was fairly new. The PPP was fairly new to them, and I said, you should call your banker today, and you should not go to bed tonight until you have some documents ready to apply tomorrow. Maybe it'd be helpful to you. Let me say it, and then you tell me if this is right or complete or whatever. You need payroll records. You need to be able to prove what your payroll was, average payroll over the last year. But you got to be able to document it. You need to document all compensation for employees over $100,000 in a worksheet of how you did that. So you're just including the first 100,000. You need your quarterly 941 payroll tax reports. You need your W-3s, not so that the employer's version of a W-2. You need to think about payments for vacation, parental leave, family leave, medical or sick leave. You need payments made for employers by the employer for group health insurance and for retirement plans. Does that sound like the sort of thing that small businesses ought to be preparing themselves with to go and apply?
Yes, but they also can do rent payments, mortgage payments, and utilities.
Okay.
A shortcut for your members: if any employee is compensated over $100,000, that employee needs to be in the calculation. But you can forget about all the other stuff because you can only use 100,000.
Okay.
So just make it easy on that one. For any employee over 100,000, your number is just 100,000. None of the other things that you do for them count.
So, meaning health insurance or leave or retirement plan benefits.
Once you hit 100, you're done for that employee.
Yeah, pull that off.
Nothing else matters.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's really helpful information, because we've seen the 100,000 number there, but is it 100,000 salary or 100,000 all in? the max is 100,000 all in. That's what
All
you're
in.
saying. Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. So if now if we could talk a little bit then about the about other maybe bank unique situations, what can you tell me or us about what you're hearing about additional credit worthiness requirements? So we know that the SBA has minimal requirements. Do you think, or should our members and small businesses expect that there will be other types of credit analysis, cash flow, that sort of thing that the banks are going to look at, or is it just going to be the requirements of the SBA?
Yeah, no, the guidance we've received is it's not, typically a bank would look at your cash flow, they'd look at your collateral, they'd look at your credit rating and credit history. So this is important. If any of your members have ever defaulted on an SBA loan, they're ineligible. Yeah, any government loan. If you've defaulted on a government loan, you're ineligible for the program. You might as well not put yourself through the pain. And it is one of the questions anyway. So there are things that are going to disqualify you on the application. So they can look at the application. If you're a foreign-owned firm, you're not eligible. If you own multiple companies and you're more than a 20% owner, you can only apply for one company. But the good news is that any company that hasn't defaulted and that is eligible. So there are nonprofits that are not eligible. Your association and our association are not eligible for these kinds of programs. But by and large, most are. Churches, if they're a 501c3, any nonprofit that's a 501c3, they have to be a 501c3, but if they are, they're eligible. So for the most part, this is a pretty wide open program. And, the government has done all they could. Regulators have done all they could. These are not entities that are built for speed. Ideally, we should have had an extra 2 weeks to get ready for this. But, everybody's going to do the best they can with what we have.
So, Michael, let me just see if let's land that answer very succinctly. No credit history, right?
You're not being determined. Your approval is not being determined based upon credit history, cash flow, or because if we had to do cash flow for companies right now, nobody's going to qualify. So right. Not credit history, not cash flow, not collateral.
So that's important. It's probably unlike any loan anybody has ever experienced, and I think that's important. We need to kind of wrap this up. Michael, thank you for coming on, talking about this. I think one strong message we want to tell people, because I keep hearing people say, but the banks are closed. The banks are not closed. Banks are not closed. Their lobbies may be closed, but they are in the business of banking, and they certainly are in the business of lending for this PPP program. So just a strong encouragement for everybody to understand that banks are in business right now and lending. Just let me give you a reminder. We had a webinar earlier today on some of the HR and related questions. Tomorrow is navigating the financial options that small businesses are seeing right now. That's with our partners in the Small Business Development Center. So 10 o'clock tomorrow, a webinar on navigating the financial opportunities. Monday, we're working on a webinar on really the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. Some questions. We're going to talk about the conditions of forgiveness, the sort of way to think about the risk I'm taking in taking on this loan, the next wave of questions, if you will, on the PPP. That's Monday. We'll give you more information about that tomorrow and Saturday. And then Friday, next Friday, we'll do a webinar on the remote workforce and cyber challenges that created by people who are now in the business of having a remote workforce. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock for the SBAM daily briefing. In the meantime, remember to wash your hands.
And don't touch your face. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.